You're
No,
telling
we're
me.
not on yet. We're not telling them nothing yet.
Okay.
I will tell them though, when we're on, when we're
So it
done.
wasn't aliens?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna tell them about you being an alien. The part about me being an alien, we're gonna keep a secret.
Okay.
All right. So everybody, welcome. I was just saying to Tom that we live in an old house and it's all electrically MacGyvered together. It's all certified by somebody's uncle, I'm sure. But it's interesting when we are doing different things. So I was actually on and I was just working away on some stuff. I was going to get all connected earlier. And then my room blipped. So that means everything had to restart. So if it blips again, just letting, like, I think we're good because Alec is on it. He's good with this stuff. He's rearranged some things, and I have my air off, which is helpful as well. I didn't need it on. But if it blips, stay tuned. We'll just come right back. New screen. We're good. We're good like that, aren't we? We can finagle our way, MacGyver, right?
Yeah, we can call this boomerang.
Yeah,
We always come back.
we always come back.
And my jokes are bad.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I actually had oh, it's a weird day. I just came from my workshop and we use a hotspot, and my hotspot died. How rude. And I checked it before I went. It was at 50%. So I don't know what that's about. But, anyways, I got it. I plugged it in, whatever, back to business because, it's serious. And I got a very nice compliment from a member about what a good troubleshooter I am and
Good
how
for
I
you.
don't swear, curse, or throw my device. That's a win. That might not have been Michelle from 10 or 15 years ago. Maybe 5. Maybe if I was hangry, it wouldn't have been the same. Right? Because
Yeah,
hangry's a real thing.
I hear you. I'm
Exactly.
writing my question down. One of my questions.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm not prepared. Like, I got lots of questions, but
Well,
I'm
that's what I figured. Like, yeah,
great.
honestly. So what was happening, everybody? What Michelle and I do is after the show, um, at the end of every show, we talk for a little bit, and it's like dinner time for me. And Michelle works all day; it's busy, and so it's kind of dinner time for her too, even though it's later. And we're just busy people, right? So we do our show, a little recap, and nothing crazy, and then we say, hey, if we have something for next
Next
week,
week.
we go, let's talk. Want to talk about this? And we're pretty easy to get along with. And then sometimes we wait till the weekend, and I'm usually the one asking Michelle, "What did we decide on?" So I'm almost always the guy doing that. And this week, Michelle said that yesterday. She goes, "What do we decide on? Or what are we talking about?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Why don't we ask each other a couple of questions?" That's where we're at. And if you have questions, I did a little minute video. For those that are joining us live, if you have any questions for us, put them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them.
Please. Yeah. Ask Tom the hard ones. Ask me the easy ones. We'll go that way. Right?
Yeah.
Very good. Well, let's start with how was your week?
Um, it's interesting. I don't know if it's like for you because you work from home, but you've got like set hours, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So in a good way, my life meanders. So I have work responsibility, and um, I can work lots of hours or work not a lot of hours, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so it means how do you become responsible with your time? So sometimes it's I I I like the fact that I'm in control.
Yep.
I have a responsibility. If I don't hit my targets, I have questions, but I do good for the company. The company knows that, and
Yep.
I do well, right? But sometimes I think in the sense of discipline, like I remember owning restaurants or being in a restaurant and you're there from like 6 to 2 or 3.
Oh, yeah.
And so, the double-edged sword of having the freedom of your own time, as I use my hands, freedom of your own time,
Yeah.
it's a double-edged sword. So this week, um, like I'm just getting, I feel like, because maybe because of the affection or whatever was going on with me, I feel like I'm trudging in mud a little bit. Like I feel
Gotcha.
pretty good mentally, but I feel a little bit of brain fog.
Yeah.
I feel like it just takes a little more energy to get started.
Right.
And then it's sunny now, but the last 2 days it was kind of cloudy, and in those days too, you're like, "Oh, whatever. I'm gonna sleep, watch TV, and eat."
Right.
Maybe
Right.
not in those orders, right?
No, of course not. That's right. That's
Yeah,
right. Yeah, I love that. Good. It
yeah.
takes some discipline to, make sure you're like it is. It's definitely different when you're setting your own hours, but still have to set up your own appointments, do all that scheduling, right?
Right back. I'm just gonna blow my nose.
Go blow your nose. Go blow your nose. Now I'm itching my nose. See how led we are by suggestion? So everybody, I don't know who's
Back.
and he's back. I don't know who's with us so far because I don't know why I cannot see that. But anybody who happens to be with us, good day. Glad you're here with us
We
today.
have Lisa, Kathleen, and Callie.
All right. Nice to see everybody.
Thanks,
Glad
people,
you're
for
here.
joining us.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. What a great start. Well, my week was good. It was very uneventful. It's the way I like it. Uneventful, I think. Trying to think. I think so. They all sort of blend together. It is different when you work from home because I don't venture out. I have a lot of things going on, but I don't venture out far. I don't have the need for pants. I
Yeah.
just, shorts, just dressing down a lot. My one day I pick from my three shirts because I'm a minimalist. I'm waiting for one day one of my members to go, like, don't you buy new clothes? No, no, I don't. Or I tie dye them, right? That's my gig. But yeah, finding balance, right, is between casual and work and getting in. And, I keep thinking, holy Hannah, it's halfway through August. I should probably get a tan soon. I should probably look at that to get out in my own yard, get a tan. But, it is.
And you know what's interesting with that, Michelle? Because that's one of my meandering the other day is this good and bad again, right? Because everything can
Yeah,
have a benefit and a detriment, right?
right.
And like having a good consistent and working with my daughter and my granddaughter, right, the oldest one with this, right? We're habitual people, so we have habits and habits and habits. And if we're dealing with whatever we're dealing with,
Yeah.
depression or whatever, and I don't know if it's I think it's harder. I don't know if it's harder to start a new habit or to break an old habit. I think we might have talked about this before.
Yeah.
And so my daughter's trying to deal with depression.
Mhm,
Not that I'm an expert in womanly things, but
mhm.
she has really like knock you off your feet, women cramps and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And
Good times.
and it's hard, right?
It is.
And
Absolutely.
you froze, so I think we lost you.
Am I back?
You're me and Steve. Oh, you're back.
Ta-da! Was my
You
face
froze for a second.
weird? Usually it's like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't have a stroke, but almost.
okay, good. Okay, well, good. That's
You
good.
heard my question though, right?
No.
That wasn't one of the questions. The question, yeah. So you did. One of us froze. Technology, alien technology. But I
Yeah.
said, this isn't the question of the questions. This is just a bit like working through stuff with my daughter. Do you think it's harder to start a new habit or
Oh,
to stop a bad habit?
I think they're equal. I really do. Because and you're so right. Joe Dispenza, he does a lot of good. Look him up if you've never heard of him. He does a lot of talks about 95% of what we do every day is just routine. We're programmed, not in a like conspiracy theory programmed way, but sort of, because we drive the same way to work every day. We eat the same three foods. I wear the same shirts, all that stuff. So adding in something new, that change as well as breaking a habit, whether it's whatever that habit is, it's like flexing a new muscle. You got to start slow, have patience, kindness, and don't go down those long, dark roads of blame and shame
No.
if it takes longer than you expect.
And it's interesting. Again, I was talking to my daughter about this the other day. Um, it's interesting because I read this paper. I don't know. I don't like a paper as an article, not a paper as a newspaper.
No,
Newspapers anymore.
I
I
was
don't.
going to say, is that still a thing?
And we this some type of psychologist, can't remember, but he says he talked about variables, a little bit like you were saying, like in a way they're equal, but depending on um, your chemical makeup of your brain, your biological DNA type thing.
Sure.
Some people are wired, adventure, newness is like, hey, this is great. And some people, they're just wired for routine. My son, who's incredibly smart, starting university 2 weeks. Um, him and I were just talking about how he aced school, honor student, right?
Yeah.
Didn't I didn't I'm telling you, I didn't see him do homework once. Well,
Yep.
maybe once in 4 years.
Yep.
In his brain, there's something, and I was the same way in school too, that retains that information.
That's right.
And he likes routine. He has the same, he's eating the same sub his whole life, tuna sub with the same stuff. So
Right.
he finds comfort in that, which is
Right.
good.
Right.
But all of a sudden, when something comes out of left field for any of us that are that personality type, um, and we have to change, medically,
Yeah.
relationally,
Sure.
it's harder for that person
Right.
to, in my mind, I'm not, this paper talks says depending on your biological makeup, the way your brain's
Sure.
wired, it's harder for some people. It can be harder um, to change their routine, like you said, right?
Sure. And then there's those other dynamics of,
Yeah,
what's your why? Is that something that's really anchored you? Did you have a health scare and that's why you decided to, create a healthy lifestyle? Or did you have an aha moment of,
yeah,
wow, I'm worthy. I could have that too. Or that person is no smarter than I am, but they have these different things that I could have as well if I put the same effort into it or whatever, right? And it's interesting when you talk about school smart, because lots of people are school smart, but they're not street smart, or the opposite, right? They're not highly educated, but they're really on their game. Look at, just for an example, drug dealers that are in prison. They're great salesmen, right? They're entrepreneurs. They check all the boxes. They just had a terrible product, right?
yeah.
So, but when you look at those core skills and whatever drives them, like whatever your why is, it really anchors you. So it's really important that when you want change, like one of the things that I ask myself quite often is, are the things I'm doing today, and usually it's a specific thing, are they aligning with where I want to be? Right. So, like in my journey, whether it's where I want to be on the short term or on the long term, is what I'm doing going to enable me to be an active nana with my grandchildren? A bunch of unhealthy habits or not, right? Is it going to keep me, for whatever? Everybody's different. So nothing we say is a blanket statement, but it's important that you realize that. Are you frozen or are you thinking?
I'm just
It's,
I'm watching the screen, pretending I'm looking at you.
oh my gosh, you're very good at it. That was good. But
I'm
yeah,
I'm
like,
still working on this thing.
oh, red light, blue light, right?
Be do.
There we go.
Which shows that from a kid show? Be
Wasn't
do.
it do be? Or was
Minions,
that a flashback to something else?
minions.
Oh, Minions. I
Be
had a
do
romper
be.
room on the brain.
Sorry, but
Yeah.
yeah, when you said our Y, I was thinking, is she talking about the Y chromosome? Is she talking about the Y as
The
the
why that
universal
anchors
question in our
us.
brain?
Yeah, no, like when you decide that you want change, then like what's your why? Is it, and it can't be vague. It has to be specific. So like it's very easy to say I want to have better health.
Yeah,
Okay, so whatever. What does that mean? Or I want to I want to be abundant. Okay, what does that mean? Right? Or I want to be more financially stable. What does that mean? That means not living at paycheck to paycheck. That means maybe having a little bit of a savings account. That means, saving up my oh, Inspector Gadget. Oh, Gwen, you're so funny. You're on the ball. I love
I'm
that.
I'm I'm more I'm current, Gwen.
You're
But thank you. I relate to it.
do. Sorry, it's gonna be in your head now. But
Yeah.
you're right. It's such, and that's what drives us and motivates us for change. If you don't anchor on, if you don't, I mean, you look at and it's interesting when you talk about break a habit, the habit of me not eating chips versus not doing crack, not equal, right? So, like, I mean, it depends what habit you want to break. Although I do really like my chips. I have a bag right here, as a matter of fact. Um, just in case I might have a chip emergency.
Yeah.
But, but yeah, that like what's the you just I'll drop dead on this statement that you have to have a why. It just pushes you forward. It's and it actually ties in with some of my questions today because I didn't know what I was doing. So wait till you hear those.
You want to ask the first question?
Oh, you know what? I would. It ties in with what you're saying. Okay, so again, I was totally confused by the question of creating a question. So here's my question. So I am speaking it to Tom, but feel free to share your answer in the chat. If you're watching this on replay, still share it in the chat. We will get a notice, we'll read it, we'll respond, or just love it, something like that. If you woke up tomorrow and a miracle had happened and you'd achieved all your goals, what would the first thing you notice be?
Say that one more time.
Okay, so imagine, so you have goals, you have whatever you think your life is like once you've achieved your goals. So
Right.
let's say you went to bed tonight and you woke up in the morning and this miracle had happened. Everything, all your goals have been achieved. What's the first thing you'd notice that would let you know that your life is different now?
Um, that's a good question.
Thank
So
you.
for me, and I'm gonna answer the question, then I'm gonna go back to kind of what we're talking
Absolutely.
about what our why, because I think that's an interesting part, right?
Yeah,
Too, is so if I wake up tomorrow morning and there's like I know my life has changed, my goals, or not, yeah, my dreams maybe, right?
yeah,
The two like physical evident things that would happen would be my hernia.
right.
And it's funny because I tell people this, or we talk about some people. They said, here's a question they asked me. They said, would you rather
Yep.
get surgery and get rid of that huge hernia, or would you rather have the hernia and have your whole digestive tract back? So I had colon cancer, for those that don't know. So they removed the whole bottom part of my digestive tract, right? So I have an ostomy bag in that, right? And I've told everybody the hernia,
Interesting.
right? So to your
Ah,
question, the two obvious things that I would know, you know, a genie, miracle,
yep,
alien abduction,
whatever.
whatever,
Yep.
Donald Trump, no,
God.
I'm joking. So whatever happened, I would notice that. And then
Yep.
the other big thing, which will be another conversation, is my sleep is I've had part of it with the hernia, but I've had, I believe, majority of my adult life. I'm pretty sure I don't, on average,
Mhm.
I might be lucky to get 5 hours sleep. I go through weeks where I'm getting three. I'm up 3, 4, 5 times a night because of the hernia, right, or whatever, right?
Yep.
So I would notice there would be this physical refreshing part of my body finally getting the
Yep.
sleep it needs to repair,
Yep.
and I would notice the hernia gone, and I would be like,
Would your environment
and
be different? Would your room be different?
what's that?
Would your room and your environment be different? Or would you be,
Are you talking about like relationally, aesthetically?
yeah, exactly.
The
That's
posters on my wall? I
right.
don't,
Maybe, yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Um, yeah, I think again, and another question, I didn't write this down, but I'm gonna write it down later. Another thing is people that I do some work with is do you think, knowing yourself, asking yourself, I wrote down is ask yourself questions. So part of our journey, our finding our why, don't be scared to ask yourself questions. Don't live
Yes.
in a bubble. Don't live in whatever sphere and in ignorance. Like, don't be fearful, right?
Yeah.
And so the question was, are you a type person that notice internal things first or external things? The question, right?
Good question. Yeah.
And in that, the language would be if you walked outside, would you like notice the blue sky and the sun outside? I'm looking outside, or would you feel the warmth of the sun? And neither are wrong.
No, that's a good one.
Yeah, I'm writing a book about it. But
Well,
yeah,
don't forget the little people.
I think like that. It's such a see. It's our perspective thing, right? All of a sudden,
Totally.
your life has changed. You're like, what was the Jim Carrey movie? Yes Man? Was he in some Jim Carrey
Yeah, he
typical
was.
a
Yeah.
movie where everything
I think
changed?
that
And
was the one with the remote where he could
yeah, something like that.
I
Yeah.
think so. I
So
think so.
it would be interesting if we had a list of say tomorrow everything your goals like you said happen, what would
Yeah,
be the top 10, 1, 2, 3, what would you be first? So my obvious answer would be a physical transformation,
right. Right.
which obviously would affect me mentally and emotionally.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And maybe financially, depending on how you cover all your supplies and meds,
Oh
right?
yeah, totally.
Absolutely. Well, and I think when it's like daydreaming, like when you think about those things, the sky's the limit. Like if you ever, like every once in a while on social media, I'll put out a question like, if money was no option and you had 7 days, you could do whatever you wanted, what would you do?
Right.
And it's so funny. We feel so weighed down and inhibited and in lack sometimes we can't even visualize what that would be. And it's so funny because like the responses I get are such a big tell. Like only 7 days. Well, am I gonna have a job when I like instead of just, you know what? Just imagine, just don't complicate it. Just stop and imagine. Like that's where being open to receive, right? Like what do you expect? Do you actually expect to achieve your goals? Because if you don't, you're a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like you're gonna have all sorts of issues because you're not expecting it. It's interesting, like what Gwen said. She's gonna keep looking for validation. I think that's a natural thing, but that's where if you like, so for me in that scenario, I wake up, I'm in a beautiful bedroom, I have fresh sheets, I have a beautiful ensuite. Yeah, Al's with me too. And I can look out the window and I can see the mountains and they're just beautiful. And I'm not getting up running anywhere, but I mornings are tough for me. That it's something about my oxygen really drops while I'm sleeping, which nobody can figure out, but whatever. So in this scenario, I feel good, but I don't overthink my lungs because the reality is if aside from wildfires, if I lived where you live, I would be much more healthier because I
Yeah.
live in the most polluted city in Canada. So I am in the wrong city for what I have. And I can't leave my great, like, whatever, it is what it
Yep.
is. But had I moved out there at some point, I might still not even know I have this because it would be fresh air, right? And everything. So I don't really think so much about the health part of my lungs. Well, for one, too, because I know it's a forever thing, but I don't because I attach it to the mountains and the fresh air. Like I'm like, that's medicine for me, right? So
Yeah.
like that would be my scenario. But when I look and I see I'm not in this MacGyvered house that the power goes out when you plug in the deep fryer, that's an indicator I've achieved some goals, right? So it's interesting how that works, but that imagination, we're so sidetracked by stress, drama, devices. Like when was the last time? Here's a question. When was the last time you looked at clouds and picked out what they made you think of, right? Like, oh, that looks like a bunny. That looks like whatever, right? Oh my gosh, that looks like Alec. No, just kidding. But whatever it is, like we don't do that enough. So we're so limited. That's, when you think about the children, they're much better at doing that than we are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how I can go back to the why question. It's got to what we're talking about too, right? I'm
Mm,
writing down dream imagination, right? So part of one of the things that you mentioned, and again, like we need to give ourselves permission
yeah.
to we need to be okay with ourselves, and then we need to have the want and desire, which will affect the commitment we're called to grow and change. The whole goal is, do we want to be healthy and our wellness, right? And that can look different for everybody. That can some
Oh,
could be
100%.
right.
That's
So
right.
Michelle's question earlier, or we were talking about the why, and so one of the things that I've talked about is like when I had cancer, so I wasn't an overly active guy. I've been busy on my feet, but I'm not like when I was younger. I played sports, but the joke is that once I got married, I gained weight, right? So
Sure.
back
Common.
in my early days, again, I was a hardcore drug user. Didn't know how to deal with the trauma of stuff in my life, and I was probably between the age of 16 and mid 20s, maybe 160, 170 pounds. And I have pictures that show skinny Tom, and people are like, holy crap, right?
I've seen pictures. Yeah.
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 And, but that was my norm, right? And so, anyways, got married, put on weight, do these things. And there's always a joke about putting on weight, but I, I still picture Al as pretty skinny, to
Oh,
be blunt.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tom Hoffman,
So,
no.
we can't blame getting married and all that. But so when I was diagnosed with cancer, had cancer, went through the surgery. First of all, you find out you have a colonoscopy, and the surgeons, the doctor says, "Can you and your wife come back tomorrow?" Instead of say, "Hey, we'll see you next week."
Right.
As soon as you know that, they're going, okay, they found something, right? So
Right.
you go through that journey, whatever, 5 or 6 months. You go through. I go through the surgery. We go through recovery, all those things, right? And you're traumatized. And by the way, for people watching now, there's a few more people that jumped on. If we learn to ask ourselves questions, it's okay. Like it's really important to acknowledge where you're at, and if you feel you're working through healing, or you're
Sure.
working through trauma, you're working through, like my daughter, again, I'm talking to her about, like, you need therapy so bad because you do not realize how difficult it was for you in 10 years of your marriage.
Right.
You were mentally, emotionally locked under the stairs, giving bread and water, pretty much, right? I'm not trying to be mean. I still love, like, I love my son-in-laws, like I love him because I don't hate
Right.
him, but he wasn't physically abusive. But it takes, you have to acknowledge that, then work through it, right? So for me, I think it was probably, so I had the cancer surgery 7 years ago, I think. And about 2.5 years ago, something shifted
Yep.
in me, and I went and got a gym pass.
Right.
I have I have not cursed the gym, but I was like, gym, come on. That'd be like me eating tofu. Come on.
Right.
That's not real. Give me a bar of soap. That'll taste better, right?
Uh,
And so I've gone back and looked at what shifted that mentality. Like, because I could do sports. I do sports. I played sports most of my life, like just recreational, right?
sure.
And so in talking with people, I've gone back and going like, and even with Teresa, I've gone back and said, like, I don't know. Like, I don't have this epiphany moment. Lightning hit me. You know,
Yeah.
here's a joke. I became a born again gym member,
Oh, wow.
but something shifted. So I actually once in a while think about that again, and I
Yeah.
go, it didn't even have to be conscious. Something, a realization happened on some level
That's right.
where I needed, and I pay money for the gym, so it cost me money, right?
Yep.
So here's one of the questions. So with what you do
Yep.
on with WW, right? Um, how many? So I've gone to the gym. I've been real faithful. Then I've gone through little bits of things
Yep.
causing me not to be as faithful. Same as like us eating. We eat, we're good, and then all of a sudden we're not, right?
Absolutely. That's
With
right.
WW, with the countless people you've worked with over the years, I'm pretty sure you've seen people gung ho,
Oh, for
and
sure.
then all of a sudden, some can have a setback, whatever we would call it. Then they're
Yep.
back again, and again, it's depending on their makeup, and then
Yep.
some setback, 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 setback,
Exactly. The
and
slip,
then
the
you
slide.
and then all of a sudden, and they're beautiful people, but then
Oh,
all of a sudden you see them years later and you go like, hey, like, how you doing, right?
yeah.
And there's no like judgment, whatever, but it's something in them, this lack of could be many things, right?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
here's the question to throw
Okay.
into that bag of 10,000 words. How do you, so my question I wrote down was being in control when you're out of control. And this had nothing to do with what I was saying about WW. I wrote this down when we first started. So how do you, for Michelle, how
Yeah.
do you find the positive being in control when you feel you're out of control, or your environment, your physical, mental, emotional state is feels chaos or out of control? How does Michelle?
So in those moments, I tend to flip the script and get pissed off that something else is controlling my mood. And it's in that moment that I can pull it right back. But it's taken years of practice. Okay. So of
Yep.
me doing this, but that's part of how I quit smoking. I was like, seriously, I am stopping going doing something that gives me joy because I need 7 minutes for a cigarette. And I had it timed 3.5 for a half, 7 minutes for a whole one. Full stop, can't do the dishes. Full stop, can't hang out with my kids. Can't go in the store, whatever. There was something recently too that was frustrating me. I forget what it was. Wasn't you this time? Just kidding. And I exactly had that thought, like, I'm not giving that my power. And you know what? Right now, with everything going on, I follow a lot of the corruption in the Canadian government that's going on. And that's something where I have to be like, because then it's frustrating, or we have a big tent village here in town affecting a lot of people, but I can't change these things. So sometimes, and I physically feel it, I feel frustrated or drained, tired. I'm not against sending myself for a nap either. That also helps. But yeah, I flip it around because I realize, why am I giving control to something I can't control?
Yeah. And here's what's hard, right? I was thinking, so I'm I'm a person who, and like, this is sound all goody goody, which is great, but it doesn't mean it's always goody goody because I'm
Right.
not perfect. But me and Michelle pretty much are people that are we're wired to just give. We just give, right?
Yep.
And we're, that's just who we are. And there's good and bad with that. You can be wheeled into codependency easy, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
so learning boundaries, that was is it you as we get older, we I think we find more resolve and less hesitancy in changing, wanting change. Like at the gym I go to, the amount of people that are my age in their 60s going to the gym, and I don't know if it's the first time or not, but these people, guys bigger than me, women,
Yep.
all of a sudden they realize they want, and they're not trying to be bodybuilders or weightlifters, all of a
No.
sudden I realize as I'm getting older, I want to, and that may be what happened to me, right? But here's a question, there's a group of people, there's lots of people on.
Good.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
Yeah, I'll just go
Thanks
through
for
names.
putting
One,
up with
Janice, Florence, Callie, Catherine, Lisa, Krista, Angela, Missy, Gwen, Joanne.
Yay! Glad you're here.
Yeah.
Woo woo.
So,
Very
so,
good.
so I'm going to ask a vulnerable question, but you don't have to answer it. And I'll try to, like, I don't know exactly the situation. I know.
All
What
right.
is your, no. Um,
My internet's gonna go down.
yeah, I figured. So,
Do it.
and,
Say it.
and,
I
and
can
I'll
handle
flip the question back to me about me and Teresa,
it.
about
Okay.
when I had cancer. So I don't remember the whole thing, but when Al, the big factory that he worked for, it
Yep.
closed down, right? How many years ago was that?
We all worked there. That one,
How long ago?
that was January 2011. I'll remember it my whole life. We all
Okay.
lost our
And
jobs.
then it seemed like a little bit after that that Al was sick, right?
Oh, he was sick all through it and at the beginning.
Yeah. So so part of so for you, and it doesn't deteriorate your, like, your love, but that's out of control in the, like, leaving the work thing, but all of a sudden you have a partner who you love.
Yep.
It doesn't mean, get mad at each other. However we deal with that, normal, right?
Yep.
But
Sure.
all of a sudden now, Michele, in your wiring, even it's not that I was putting it on you, but all of a sudden you bear the weight of the responsibility. What's that?
It was not good. No, so
Is that
just
okay for me to ask that?
no, that's fine. Absolutely. So here's just so we get a little background. So he has a so we're a mess between the two of us. He has a hereditary blood disorder as well. And with him, he holds iron. He doesn't pass it at all. So before he started working at that factory, he was home getting phlebotomies once a week for about a year. So he was, and that was very frustrating. I'm not a nurse for a reason. So we had a lot of conflict. There was some yelling involved. He was sick. I was the yeller. It is what it is, just owning it. And then we went and then he got better because I got a job with really good benefits. So then we could get him some treatments he needed. And so, because we found a good doctor, because he was also misdiagnosed. And then we all worked at this factory, me, my oldest child, Al, once he was better. So I worked for about 2 years, got him better. He started working there. And then the bank repoed us. So that was a very, it's interesting when we talk about the roller coasters in life because I've had my share of dips and valleys, if you will. And when he was sick, we had our moments, but I was gone a lot because I was the provider. So I could leave. And then I was doing Sarnia Rocks, my website. I was getting free tickets to all the concerts, having a great old time while the guy was sick. But then when he was better and we got the jobs, and then the bank repoed us, that was brutal. And I was really angry for a while because I worked really hard putting myself through school in my 30s to get a job. I was working for the Valley. I was at this plant. I was making more money than I'd ever made in my life. And then
Right.
that got pulled out from under me. But that's when I really got seriously into meditation. And that's when, so fun fact, I remember, so I stayed on the bank because I worked in the accounting department. They hired me back on at my same salary, but on a week to week basis, screwed us out of our vacation pay, just saying. Anyways, but I'm not bitter. Um, so they kept me working for about 6 months at my same pay, handing out ROEs, selling off inventory. It was long, sad days. And my controller, who was my boss, he kept saying, Michele, you want me for a reference? Where are you going to find another job? And I was so bitter at
Yeah.
the corporate world, which is so funny because I work for two corporations today. But I took a year off after the bank finally walked me out, and I took every post-it I could grab. I filled a box. I have an adding machine. I'm sure I'm past the.
Pencil and pens and rubber
Yeah,
bands.
that's right. You're stealing my vacation pay? I don't think so, sir. So I packed up my shit and I came home. And then I spent about a year of just screw it. Like, what did I do all this for? I had student loans, blah, blah, blah. My job before working there had downsized. So that but at the same time, I still had faith in good things. So, like the day I got laid off from the job before the manufacturing facility, before then, or the day they laid me off, I called my friend who is a headhunter. I had my new job by the end of the week. Like the stars align, right? But in that dark period, I maxed out my whole pokey. And that's when I got involved with Weight Watchers and really got my dream job until COVID, when all my hours were cut and whatever. But I really feel now in reflection, I needed that dark time. I needed to self reflect. I started doing serious meditation, sometimes 3 times a day, and guided with headphones, not like just listening. I'm at the beach, I'm in the mountains, I'm anywhere but here. Like, and we had all these, I'd have people come up to me and say, wow, you all work there? I'm surprised you didn't lose your house. And then I'd be like, what? I should lose my house? Oh my gosh. And so all that, and I'm not going to get into the details, but we were really financially, but I did so much. And then at that point, the roles were reversed. He went and started working at the school board for a couple years as a custodian, or a
Yeah.
whatever engineer the term would be these days. And so he did that, and the roles reversed. And then, yeah, and then I got involved with Weight Watchers, and it was all history from there. And that's where, although Weight Watchers is another big company, at the
Right.
same time, it's still, I feel everything was for a reason. Like, even with my two exes, the beater and the cheater, it all happened for a reason, right?
Yeah.
I needed to have those experiences. And then now with Al and I, 28 years in, he's got some stuff going on with like severe arthritis, and he had a heart attack, whatever. But we're stronger, we're committed. We don't fight, we let the small stuff
Yeah.
go. He doesn't talk to me when he's mad. It really works out well.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
so interesting because again, I think um like you one thing I'll just say this and we'll put a sidebar, I wrote it down for another time. But um I was talking to somebody a while ago, and talking about everything, talking about like this whole thing about how we in a way believe like nothing's by chance type thing.
absolutely.
And this was a person that lost within the same month, mom and dad to cancer.
Oh dear.
And so for them to think everything's for a reason, and
Mhm.
this is a few years later. She's somebody I think I mentioned I'd love. I don't know if she would ever do a forum with us, but she wrote some just great, sharing her grief and healing, and still missing her parents years
Yeah,
later. But so for some people, this is what I'm learning. It's kind of language. So when we say that, we're not saying that the energy or life is against us or not. It's just reality is, it rains on the good and the bad. It shits on it, like for the most part, right? And like Michelle was saying, for me, when I was sick, and in that moment, and if somebody from work watches this later, whatever, they can do whatever. But my job is to take care of a territory, be profitable, whatever.
yeah.
And after I had surgery, and like a year and a half later, I had my hip replaced, which was fantastic. I should have done years ago. But in the moment, I didn't realize how depressed and incapacitated I was. I basically did the bare minimum I can do.
That's
And
right.
in the midst of that, Teresa, my wife, ended up being um, not by choice, by the way, a care aide,
Oh,
and
exactly.
she's working through her stuff,
Yep.
and it's draining her, and it's draining her. Then all of a sudden, we get to a point a couple years ago where we had a townhouse. The stairs were killing me for different reasons, but so we decide, and maybe 60-40, my decision, if I can own that, um, to sell the house. And we talked about this, like, so we're not scared to ask each other questions, but all of a sudden we'd already separated our money, and I was paying for a larger percent of the bills because I made more money, stuff, right? So when we sold the house, I was thinking it's our separate money. Anyway,
Right.
that's a whole different story. But anyways, at the end of this, when we sold the house and we were going to rent here,
Right.
uh, again, probably 60-40, my decision. She decided and told me, and it cut her to the heart, that she goes, I don't want to. She goes, I can't move with you once the house is sold. Been sold already, but once they take an occupancy, right?
I get that.
And it crushed her, and it was probably one of the most important moments
Yeah.
for both of us. And how, like, we look back at that, was nothing mean and all that, but to be vulnerable and say I needed, she was dealing with menopause,
Oh,
still working through that.
yeah.
She was dealing with burnout,
Yeah.
and just, like, not that I'm a dead horse, but she felt she was, some of it was a lot of it was true, but then it's compounded of
That's
the weight she felt. So
right.
joking, say it's 100 pounds, for her it felt like 200 pounds, as an example, right?
No, I get it for sure. I
and
felt that.
and
Yeah.
the thing is, with all of us, if, and there's some great questions there, we got a group, larger group of people jumped on, but the thing is, like, this is why you have to ask yourself good questions. You can't be fearful. If you're fearful, bring a partner in, like Michele, like being a coach with WW. That's what the whole purpose of a coach is. With me working through counseling, we're partnering with you. Michele and I've learned we don't own people's situation, else we would need a special vacation or something.
That's
But part of it is being able to reflect back, and me being old, as we get older, for me, I've found that it's easier. It's been easier, not always easy, to be more honest, right? Ron had a question on here. What's the difference between boundaries and walls? So I'm going to let you answer that first, Michele, and then I'll throw my thoughts on it.
well, it's an interesting question because as soon as you say wall, I feel like it's solid, not movable, where boundaries, I mean, they're more flexible, right? So if I'm answering correctly to what your question is, but I think like boundaries are more negotiable. Putting a wall up, and that doesn't mean you can't knock a wall down. We've all done it, but it takes more work because it's more permanent. Like permanent, that's not the word that I want, but it's more solid and maybe goes deeper. Where when I think of a boundary, I feel like a wall, I think of a brick wall. When you say a boundary, I think of maybe one of those fences that you would have around something that you can, it's just got a little bit more flexibility. Feel free to jump in if that's not what you're thinking of. What you're thinking, Tom?
Yeah, Gwen put not flexible. So here's one of
Yeah,
the things. So me and Michele laugh, I chuckle. We have our chuckles because we have all of our hashtags that we're going to do at some point. We haven't. I've
heck
written a couple
yeah.
down, but anyways, and I've thrown at her a while ago. We talked a bit about perception, perspective, right?
Yeah.
So Ron, and it sounded like a great question, and I'm not sure. Like, I don't know you, Ron. I know you from here. Michele speaks so well of you. Um,
Hashtag
and
awesome.
yeah, and so I was gonna say, so if I was counseling somebody and they had a question like that for me, I would ask, because I will make an assumption. I'd say, so first part, what do you think when I use the word, when you use the word wall, what does it mean to you? And so Michele shared what it meant to her,
Yeah.
almost an unmovable object, blah blah, like, not blah 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 is disrespectful, but that, in that thing, it's almost in a way unchangeable. I know you can bulldoze it, it's
But
not
it
flexible,
takes
like
a
Gwen said, right?
bulldozer. Right.
And so a boundary, and I'll give a couple examples. Like, first of all, we need to set boundaries for ourselves. Like
Oh,
it, it is,
Absolutely.
if you don't know that yet, like Michelle and I joke about boundaries of eating a bag of chips. Actually, I gotta throw this out. It's the wrong perception, perspective, but it doesn't matter. I
Okay.
saw Mom today, and
Okay.
and of course she watches Fox News. So
Okay.
I'm really tired of the. I don't watch a lot of news, but uh, I wish they'd stick to policies. I'm tired of the Hollywood productions of
And
Harris
opinions.
and Trump too. Anyway, so let's leave our political view aside, right? So Trump talks about the economy, and whoever thought of this is like genius. And he goes like, when the economy is like good, and he brings the thing of Tic Tacs, he goes, it's like this, and somehow somehow he gets a little thing of Tic Tacs, and he says this is what happened after Biden Harris, right? So leave the political thing alone, right? Our perception of a wall to a boundary and interchangeable, like in a house, use for an example, in a house, if you buy a house and you go, kitchen's small, I want to remove that wall, so that wall doesn't feel like an immovable thing. It's it's not a weight bearing wall. I'm not a carpenter, so you can tell, but I know that.
Right.
But a boundary again, a boundary is kind of the guideline, right?
Mm.
And so here's one person I talked to was an example. He's a mechanic, right? He says if you have the blueprints for a house and you have a boundary for dot 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 for a wall, that, then you set up a boundary or a drawing, right?
Yep.
If you Once you start building the wall, it's harder to take the wall down than to change the boundary, which is a little bit like we're all talking about.
That's right.
Here's another thought with that. We talk about I was looking at our old videos, Michelle, a while ago on YouTube this morning, actually, and we are talking about forgiveness as example of boundaries and walls, right? So
Right.
you can be in you can have had horrible trauma done to you by another person. It could be a partner, it could be ethnic kind of a situation, it
Sure.
could be
Lawyer.
what?
An employer.
An employer.
Yeah.
It could be being robbed or attacked, like all these things, right?
Yep.
And so when we talk about forgiveness, we're not changing the boundary of separation, but we're actually in a way looking for forgiveness in that situation to take our wall down, because we'll bring that wall into the next relationship, right?
Oh, absolutely. And if I can add to that, Ron put on here, I just think some people set boundaries not realizing they're building walls.
100%. Perfect, Ron.
Yeah, you totally nailed it. And when I think of, boundaries, so let's say it's in a relationship, say it's an employer relationship, just because that's not emotional. So if I set a boundary, maybe I'm going to set it really strict, and then we're going to see how it goes. And then maybe I'm going to nudge it over a little bit, or maybe I'm going to so maybe I'll work 15 minutes overtime, maybe, you know what I mean, whatever it is. So it's still negotiable. And when you say wall, that's me and my exes. There's a wall, non-negotiable. And it's done, it's final, done. But when it's a boundary, you're still invested. You're still in the game, right? Do you know what I mean? But then once you've decided it's a wall, then that's a completely different thing. Not
And
saying
like Ron had a great question. I just think some people set boundaries not realizing they're building walls. So
exactly.
as Ron's saying, and this is if I've learned anything in life, I ask questions.
Yeah.
I'm learning to ask more and more questions, because I'm going to have a perspective
Yep.
on things like walls or boundaries based on my experience and my understanding.
Yep.
Just true, right? So
Exactly.
Michelle used earlier about, I'm just going to use an example from me, right? And then some people will talk about being liberal or not liberal, right? But you have these all over the world. By the way, we have these cities going up, walled cities. people taking over parks, people that need help and support, people that don't, that are just abusing,
That's
and
right.
they're anarchists, right? So we're in this world. Actually, quick sidebar. When I was me and Teresa visited friends in Greece years ago. Went to Athens, super cool. Saw
Neat.
the Acropolis, felt so small. Just the culture, like that's I wish, hope for you one day that your life has changed for your breathing and financially.
Yeah,
There's something about seeing something that we've not just seen in movies and books, right? And
right.
so where our friends live, they lived like in the middle of Athens. It was like 10 blocks. It was blocked off, like it wasn't blocked off streets, but police didn't go in there. They had a militia with machine guns, biggest
Oh
machine guns I've
yeah.
ever seen in person, on the outside. So basically, you went in at your own peril. So our friend, and then it was also artistic, and but there was graffiti everywhere. I'll share some pictures actually. There's burned out cars and buildings. When the German chancellor went there the week after we were there was like and this car bombs there. This is how crazy this anarchist place was. This go back to Tent City, is um, people just left for their own safety years and years ago.
Sure.
People taxes in Greece were 50%, and there was no improvement in roads. So it was a bit of a revolt. Everything was under the table. It was anti-government and definitely anti-Greek Orthodox Church, which is their main. They just felt they were partners in bed. They just didn't care about you. They were
Right.
pillaging us, them, right?
Right.
And so there was a group of people when I went there, it happened way before that, that were in this anarchist area, and there's this cafe or whatever they call it in Greek that's operating like in one of the streets down there, right? And our friends live in a 3-floor building, no elevator,
Yeah.
and it like it's kind of artsy and then crazy at the same thing. And so this coffee shop, a restaurant's there, it's like a bistro. And I go, what's with that? We went in there, right? He goes, it was empty. These people came, took over, did it up. They don't pay rent. They don't pay power.
Oh,
They're
so
like
like
squatters
squatters. Yeah.
who, which is awesome in a way, right? So,
Right.
so back to here's the rub. So talking about perception, perspective
Yeah.
on tent cities, if it affects you in a negative way, like here, I'll say this way: I think most people will have somewhat compassion, or we have some type of compassion.
Of
At the
course.
same time, we don't want our compassion and care to be at the expense of others. So it's tricky, right? And
Very complicated.
and so these this is what I hate about politics, by the way, on both sides. Like, how do we? Here's a whatever I was saying. No, I'll leave
That's
politics.
why you let it go.
But
You
how do we? Well, I was going to use an example, right? Like how? So generally, is as a country, any country, how has a country in this world become part of the global compartment of the world, right? Like we're part of the global community, like it or not. You're gonna avoid it, but
oh,
then,
for sure.
how do you take care of your own so we can use it for our personal things? How do we show kindness? Could we have used that $2 Timmy's we bought somebody a coffee for? Probably most of us would say yes. Could have
Right.
practically used it for something.
Yeah.
But so it's that tension of riding the middle. So first of all, having clarity, make sure you're good, you're on the road to wellness.
Yeah.
Um, the boundary and waltzing, to finish off with that, in my opinion, it is if you're in trauma, I'm going to use my granddaughter. If you're a 12-year-old, if you're in trauma, it doesn't matter if it feels like a big rock was thrown at you or a pebble. You're
Right.
traumatized or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
A dog bit you compared to a little dog barked at you, type thing, right?
Mm.
To be traumatized, both either way, right? And until you kind of work through yourself and like own it to some degree and then work through it, you're stuck, right? So my granddaughter's an example, working through very difficult issues with her dad, has never felt validated. Gwen, there's your thing. Her dad's trying to get together with them. He wants them to meet the new girlfriend, and the 12-year-old can't. She's mad at her dad, and he doesn't have the ability to have compassion. It's just like from nobody knows them. I'm telling you, nobody
Right,
like
right.
none of you guys will know them, right? And it's hard for her. And so some people I know, I won't mention my mom's name. No, some people, depending on their makeup, they don't have understanding of trauma or whatever, or like you said, Ron, there are a lot of people that say, no, that's just my boundary. They don't realize it's a wall.
Right.
It's a
And
wall. And
I
you have to, when I say you have to, I'm not pushing as an aggressive way on it. We have to, in a general way, have to realize we have to find that. So my daughter and my granddaughter, it's little baby steps at a time.
That's right.
Let's do this. How
That's
do
right.
you feel? This is stuff we talk about here. Go get some sun. My daughter's
Yeah.
like you. She works from home.
Yep.
She has the weight and responsibility of taking care of that household, the
Sure.
wellness of the kids and dealing
Yep.
with their issues, the
Right.
financial issues,
Sure.
the factual cleaning the house, and she suffers with high anxiety and depression, and she's got other issues, right?
Right.
So when we're in that, the world can feel like a wall, but what we do, that's what we try to do, is we take them a step back at a time.
And I think as well, extending the olive branch, like whether you get personally involved with or not, everybody's got their own story.
Yep.
Everybody's got their own situation. Everybody's got their own past, their own upbringing. So even, you know, being, just throwing him a bone, is it Dustin, whatever his name was, it doesn't matter. But like her ex, he's got his own, like, what, not that I want to know, but like, what's his story? Why is he so angry? Where does all that come from? Like, we're all fixable, but we all like have to accept. So no matter who it is, with me and our mom, right? I accept her as she is. She has her own story. Doesn't mean I want to hang out with her all the time, but then I don't know her very well. So maybe I do, maybe I don't. I don't know. But it's that, and even when there's a wall, like I made a joke about like my two exes. I have a wall up, but you know what? I don't hate them. And I'm accountable for my own part in those broken relationships.
Yeah.
Right? I learned as I went. And for every long-term relationship, I got better at it. Maybe there were times where I should have listened or not kept, poking the beast, or, and I'm not justifying violence or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, everybody's got a story. And with me, like, I find the youth of everybody so fascinating. Like,
Yeah.
what was your life like from 0 to 12? What, you know what I mean? What was, for everybody, we've all got a different story. It's like, I was talking to a lady today, obviously about food, because I was at a meeting, but she was talking about all the challenges that come with living in an Italian household.
Right.
Meals after meals after meals, and the pasta and the carbs and the breads, and every, like, all that environment. Or, I know I joke every once in a while, um maybe not in my, like, my scenario is a little bit different, but your first bully is your mom. So is that, when you look at um adult relationships, how you treat women, what were the women influences in your life, what was the male influences, so a lot of times that is learned behavior, right? So
Yeah.
there's just so many, we're so fascinating
Yeah.
as
So
human beings.
yeah, and use what you're saying. So we're all wired different. Some people go, I don't care, like it's just too much for my brain, right? But
Hmm.
if you look at there's shows like how this was made, and all of a sudden you see
Oh
that
yeah.
the steps from you see if, like, I'll use coffee in my industry, right? You see coffee that tastes really good, but to understand the process
That's
from, we call, treat a cup, people go, that's like a lot of work. Like coffee bean is like if we have a cherry, the seed in a cherry, that's the way a coffee bean is. It's
right.
a seed in a cherry, right? And this guy was asking me last week, he goes, so what about decaf? And I explained to him how they do. It's called the Swiss water process. I go, oh my word, that's the worst word. So we like our internet, our life, right? How things work. And the funny thing is, I know we're over time. I'll say a couple little things. I'll say a joke. Do you have a video or
Really?
something or no?
Wow. Not, I do, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
It's not
So
really
so
something.
it's interesting. You mentioned about our first use the word bully, or we.
Yeah.
So you some people would. I have a love hate with the word triggering, and I use triggering good and bad. By the way, say, hey, that cheesecake is triggering me for happy thoughts or whatever, right? That
Ah,
sun is triggering me to run outside in my speedo. No, I don't have a speedo. Sorry, people, wrong picture.
yeah.
But so what happens is this whole idea of authority, and how what
Yeah.
authority will look like for you, and what had happened. Me and Michelle talk about our personal life, right?
Okay.
The one example, like Michelle was saying with her, we're brother and sister to the bone, but we both had different dads. My biological father passed away last year. He was an angry, mean man, and it's interesting. I'll talk to my mom. He was angry until he died last year at 80, I think, or something like that, or no, in early 80s. And the year before, him and his wife at that time, who's passed away too, end up both in the hospital for beating each other up while they're drunk. Like, it's just this anger that was with him his whole life. Did you know that?
Well, I met him a bunch of times.
Yeah.
I never saw that.
Yeah. So in that, he was in that, he his mom and dad, my grandparents, sweetest. I've never as a child saw anything. So people go, well, is it learned behavior, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, right?
All came from somewhere.
Yeah. So the thing is that I'm learning more and more too is our perspective and perception of parental input into our lives, the way it was in the 20s to the 40s to the 60s to the 80s to the 2000s, very, very different.
Right.
We're way more aware, which is, I think, a good thing. And we have the privilege of learning from all those steps, right?
But
So, and what I was saying about my biological dad, I had no animosity towards him. I didn't need him to validate anything in my life to make me feel as a
yep,
person,
exactly.
right? So here I'll leave with a joke. We can. Oh, here's a couple things to think about. Making personal restitution. Maybe something we'll talk about that,
Ooh, I like
because
that.
that word restitution could be, like, again, for some people it can feel like freedom. Some people feel like obligation,
Right.
like anything with restraint, right? So
Right.
here's the joke. If it's off color, email Michelle. So there's a guy, they're just man, right? And his wife says he's just always thinking of dirty things, right? So she goes, you got to go see the psychiatrist because there's something wrong with you. So he's sitting with the psychiatrist. He's laying on the couch like they did in the old days. The psychiatrist there, and he
Oh yeah.
glasses, and painting the picture of whatever.
Yep.
And so the psychiatrist go, well, let's do this little test. I'm going to show you an ink blot, and you tell me what you see. So he shows him the first ink blot. He says, so right off the top of your head, don't think about just what's the first thing comes to your mind. So he shows him the first one. He goes, breasts.
Hmm.
He does the other one, a different one. He goes, okay, what about this one? Breasts.
No, dear.
He gets another one. He shows him. He goes, breasts. So the psychiatrist says, so if this off, I apologize, but I think it's funny. Psychiatrist says, like, he goes, you've got a problem, sir. And the guy says, you're the one showing me the pictures of breasts.
Oh my God.
Perception, perspective, right?
Right. Exactly.
So one of the things that we talk about in the gist of what we've since starting this is, first of all, being natural. Like, do you like going to the dentist, Michelle?
No.
Really? Do you go once in a while, or you avoid
Well,
it?
I go every once in a while, but here's a fun fact. My mom was scared of the dentist. I never went to a dentist in my life till I was 23. I already had two kids. And
Isn't
I,
that,
I
it's so,
so
Michelle said,
funny, right?
it's so interesting. Like, I find more and more, like, it's like looking for dinosaur bones or whatever, right? I find it intriguing, not at the expense of people, right?
Oh,
But here's the thing, right? So one of the things they'll tell you, and this applies to so many different areas, they'll tell you, like, don't tense up. Like, and this could be with going to the dentist. You're gripping the chair.
Yeah.
Um, and and so when we allow our body to relax, Michelle talked about meditation. When we learn to, in the middle of hard times, physical, mental, emotional, I told my
Yep.
daughter, I said, I know you've got horrible cramps, honey. You can't even think straight. Go outside. And she went, took out, but sat in the hot tub and took a hot shower. I
Good.
said,
Good.
you have the ability to change the narrative. I'm not saying the cramps are going to go away. You
Right.
want to take them out of here, right?
Right.
So I told her about meditating, of course,
Good.
but part of it is we, with pressure and the stresses of the world and working through trauma and building walls, as Ron was saying, these things, it's these things that cause us to tighten up, end up not helping us as much as learning to relax. That's why, for those that know Michelle, those that don't, Michelle's mindset is like, hey, this is probably what's supposed to happen. This is our life, the highs and lows of life, right? And we don't ignore the hard stuff, but we roll with it. There we go. Hashtag roll with it.
Hashtag roll with it. So,
And what happens is, the more that we can, like, just take a breath.
yeah.
For all those that finances are sucking right now, and
Yep.
I've had just the weirdest financial situation. I'm not rich by any means. Thankfully, I bought a house when I sold the house, but all of a sudden I feel like, man, what else is going to happen? Like, am I going to get like the IRS coming? I don't know. It's just weird, right?
Hmm.
Take a breath.
Take a breath.
Michelle
Exactly.
said earlier, I look outside the mountain, nice sunny outside.
Yes. I look
I
at,
see my sister. I
yeah.
talk to you guys. So these problems of the world may still be there tomorrow, but I don't need to let them to manipulate and control me today.
Exactly right. And I'm going to also say hashtag lessons to learn, because I honestly believe that my purpose is to do good in the world and to learn lessons. So, how would I learn lessons if I didn't have any strife or I didn't have any struggles?
Right.
Right. So, yeah, it's very important that we embrace them, learn the lesson. And if we learn the lesson, we're not going to repeat it. Like that's really key, right? I mean, there's great things ahead for all of us. If we're open to learn, receive, give, let karma take over. Karma comes both ways,
Yeah.
right? For everything. I really believe that. So I think being open and don't be fearful of change. If
Yeah.
every day you get up, you do the same thing, it's the same thing right till bedtime, you're gonna always get the same results.
Yeah. And trust. And Gwen has a quick question. We'll just quickly answer, then
Sure.
we'll respect people's time. But I've said this before, like when I've gone in for surgery, my body, I did a thing I've done this over the years, but I think I have over 500 stitches in my body. I've been in some car. My body's been, and our bodies are, wearable to whatever degree, right? Like they just, that's, it's amazing. And so anyways, it's like learning to trust those around you. So when I had surgery, my thought was, I didn't want to get out of bed the next day. But
Right.
they want you to get out of bed. They want you to move.
Yeah.
You don't want to move. Oh, I'm too much pain. Give me more morphine. Come on, whatever, right? At some point, we have to, and it's hard to trust
Yeah.
beyond ourselves, not always easy. So we have to do that. So Gwen's question was, when are you enabling?
That's a great question.
And you know what I want to do, Gwen? Let's talk about that next week.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, excuse me while I write a note. Yeah, I think that's a fabulous idea. Because it's so true, especially when actually that ties in with my second question I didn't ask. I'm gonna save that for next week too. Excuse me while I make a note. Enabling. That's a great question because the
And,
struggle is real,
and
right?
I would throw in there, just as we're finishing up here, and Michelle can finish us up and give us words of wisdom and all that. Here's the question. It's going to sound kind of weird, but think about this until next week. When we use this word, when are you enabling? We're always thinking of, like, say, enabling a partner that struggles with something, and you're there, and your behavior enables them, right?
Mhm.
I want you to think a little bit. I want us to think about a little bit till next week. I made a note of it. Is that process of enabling, of enabling to be avoidance? There's a whole bunch of things, right?
Yep,
Reflect it back to you. When are you enabling yourself
exactly.
to not be? Um, I don't like using the word victim because it sounds a little bit harsh, but we have to, like, when are we enabling ourselves to not move forward in whatever we can to the best of our ability, the way we think, our
Oh, for
goals, our
sure.
dreams? Because
Exactly.
we actually, Michelle talks, we can enable negative thought, right? What's your
Oh,
word? You say, you have this saying, it's a hashtag saying about negative and positive. I can't remember now.
I have a million. I don't know. I gotta
You
market
have
them.
so many. Yeah.
Gotta copyright them, I think,
Yeah.
apparently. But I think you're right. And when you talk about enabling yourself, we can be a human, excuse factory. I can justify anything if I put my mind to it. Like I really can. So where are you crossing that line, right? Of your just, I mean, I can eat these chips, they're full of corn. Corn's good for me, right? Or, hey, wine's full of grapes. Grapes aren't bad,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, we could do that all day. And then with enabling other people, um, I think Gwen put that in there, and we won't get into it in this moment, but when we were talking about, like the economics and the people in tents and, you know what I mean? All that stuff and that's where those boundaries come in, right? That's where helping self, like we're helpers, Tom and I think a lot of the people that are joining us here are, I feel good. I like Ronnie is, Florence definitely is. A lot of you are, that I know personally, Gwen too, I believe. But there comes a line where, enough is enough. How much are you going to let somebody take from you? Or that sort of thing, right? And sometimes it's situations like with, maybe a senior in one of our lives who I
Talking
live,
about me?
yeah, I just live too far away. But yeah, so I mean, finding that, and again, I think of, is it like a snow fence I'm thinking of as a boundary where like it's got some give, but it's still connected all the way around the important parts. So then that's the other part, right? Where is, that maybe you're giving, but it's not appreciated, or you're giving and it's not coming back, or because they're all two-way relationships, right? So that's a really good one. Thank you for that, Gwen, because we'll carry that with us into next week and we'll do it all again.
Yeah.
Woo.
Now, I ask every week, did you end up watching that movie yet? I know you're busy. Peanut
I don't
butter
know.
and jelly?
Oh,
Peanut
I
butter
didn't.
falcon.
No, I did not. No,
Okay.
because we had the kids for 10 days. We ended up having the grandchildren for 10 days.
That sounds like a wall. No.
It was no,
Yeah.
it was a boundary. No, it was good, but I worked the whole 10, like, well,
Yeah.
I don't have days off, but
Yeah. And you work a lot too. And that was one of my other questions I'll ask for another time. But yeah. So here's the other thing. My final thoughts that I said like
okay.
20 minutes ago
Yep.
is learn to be a life learner. I think, Michelle, you've said that a few times,
Yes.
right? Here's why music, Michelle talked about for her, but we're talking about music and not just the groove, but sometimes the words, and movies for me, some people with reading. Allow yourself to be a life learner, because when we build that wall and we get stuck, and we're the kind of the Archie Bunkers in our generation type thing, right? We're actually sabotaging ourselves, first of all, right?
Exactly.
But there's a thing about allowing our minds to grow. Like, I was reading a scientific thing about, do our minds deteriorate? In some level they do with gray matter as we get older, right? That's why we have things with dementia, all this stuff, right? But there's studies they've done about how we, like our muscle, but how do we keep ourselves fresh, right?
Oh,
And they're talking about people that read, or dexterity, or things that we do. So this muscle here, which affects our, all of us, our brain, our emotions, our body, learning to be open. So for me, that's why I always share movies. I was thinking, as we are talking earlier about what was the game? There was a movie about the concentration camp. Life is Beautiful. And it's a horrible situation. This is like a Jewish country, but the father, because of his love for the son, gets him hiding so the Nazis won't take him. And he's making this game of hide and seek, like for the whole movie. No, hide. The more you hide. So it's interesting perception, perspective, how much strength
Yeah,
and resolve we have. We actually, Ron, I'm gonna end this. We don't need walls.
that's
I'm
right.
not talking political or anything like that.
Right.
Not even that. We, if we set healthy boundaries, and if we're open to learn, if a dog bit you when you're 5, you don't want to be fearful of dogs for your whole life,
That's right.
but you want to be
Exactly.
wise. You don't want to go near, right? So
Yeah.
we want to have boundaries for ourselves, and yeah, we don't need the big ice wall of Game of Thrones for those that watch Game of Thrones. They
And
needed it. There was really bad stuff. Did you watch that?
never watched it.
Al did,
I don't
maybe.
know. Maybe he
Yeah.
might. We divide and conquer when it comes to TV. I'm watching documentaries. He's watching UFC fights or whatever he watches. And then I'm like, I'm not even going in there.
So I'm
It's
gonna so
loud.
I'm gonna so for next week, just for fun, for those watching, those listen later, throw on here, and there's no judgment. So please hear this,
Good.
unless it's something like really, really like dark. Put on some of the stuff that the way stuff that you watch or read or music Michelle said you listen to, share with us because we can all learn from that. We might share something that's like, hey, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I love
okay.
that idea. Very good. All right. So, everybody, thank you for joining us today. And if I can take a minute to thank you for your ongoing commitment, I'm not saying, I'm not going to look at him. I'm not saying your ongoing commitment, like, you had to be here every single week. And I know some of you have other things going on, but for the weeks you've come, thank you for that. I'm not just talking to him for an hour once a week. Just kidding. It's been absolutely awesome, and we enjoy your contributions as well. That's
And
why I struggled today with the questions because I'm like, I'm used to giving questions, but to 50 people that answer me. So this was just sort of hard. Like, is it a question for Tom, a question for the group? Is the group going to answer? Blah, blah, blah. So thank you for growing with us. We do really appreciate it. And if I can just take a minute to remind you, you're not a victim, you're a survivor. You've survived this long. You're going to survive another day, another week, another year. And at some point today, whatever's going on today, it's going to be a memory. It's going to be something you're going to reflect on and be like me taught, like when I was in those dark days after Fibrex closed, where I used to work, I didn't feel joyful in that moment. But now I look back and I think, I got so much out of that meditation. I got so much out about of Al looking after me instead of me looking after him. Like we have that role reversal. So there's so much power in our life experiences. Look back in reflection, take what you want to keep, learn the lessons, and move on from there. Because it's a lifelong journey. We're here till the end, and none of us are getting out alive. So make the best of it. Have a fabulous week. Don't forget how absolutely awesome you are. And next week, we'll do it again. Right, Tom?
next week we'll talk about enabling.
We will. And I'll say,
We'll deconstruct it.
yes, absolutely. Deconstruction time. All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
See ya. Thanks for
Bye.
coming.
My mustache.
You got a mustache?